Welcome to today's episode of Free to Lead, Journeys of Leaders, driven by passion, inspired by purpose. I'm very excited to introduce you to today's guest, a friend of mine, Scott Doran. He's the Senior Vice President of Creative Licensing, Production Music worldwide at BMG, one of the largest music companies in the world. So, hey, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Will. Very
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, great. This is about journeys of leaders, right? Driven by passion, inspired by purpose. And I know you be passionate about music, but what's been your journey? Where did you start out in music and how did you progress through to being where you are today?
Through being in bands, basically. I was in bands as a teenager, moved to London, thought I was going to be super successful in indie rock bands, playing the bass guitar. We had a few sort of minor skirmishes with success. And then,
What was your band's name?
so in the 90s, it was Magic House.
Hmm.
And we were like a kind of Radiohead, Muse type, slightly Brit-poppy, but the kind of more alternative, harder end of that. And we did pretty well, but we didn't quite get there, unfortunately. I think we were good enough, but we didn't quite get there. And then we broke up around 2000, 2001. And then I was in another couple of bands, did a lot of session work, a lot of sort of singer-songwriter acoustic nights around London, performing songs that I'd written myself. And then got into electronica, which I think most people did in the 2000 noughties, and formed another band, and Django, and that was me and a drummer, a great drummer called James Potts, who unfortunately passed away when he was about 25 of a brain tumor. It was really quite traumatic, but he was an amazing guy. And we used to go and do these like gigs where we just improvise. We had rough structures to songs, but we'd really experiment with going on stage and just not knowing exactly where we were going to take things. And it was a real challenge, but we really wanted that challenge. And then that kind of morphed into another band, which became Eskimo Disco, which was we were a sort of electro pop band by that point, the sort of traditional 3-4 minute pop songs. And that was pretty successful. We had a few singles out, released an album, but then around 2007, that unfortunately came to an end as well. But there was a crossover at that point where I'd started doing media composing with a friend of mine, Casper, who he was in bands as well, but he was also the producer for the band Eskimo Disco. So we were going out as a kind of TV composer duo. We did a few sort of corporate jobs like music for training videos and stuff like that. And then we got a break. We did the music for the 2006 World Cup for FIFA, and that became super successful. We pitched against a lot of heavyweight composers, and we were working from a little studio at my place I was going to say bedroom. I've said that before, and people laugh at it, but it's the spare room. And then yeah, we started working for FIFA, and that was a complete game changer. We had to our abilities, what we were saying about ourselves. We were having meetings with these men in suits in parts of London, and we had to be very professional. And they assumed that we had a big recording studio in London, central London, and we didn't. So we had to fake it a little bit, and we were hiring places, and yeah, this is ours, and all this sort of stuff. So anyway, we were playing the game a little bit, but at the end of the day, we were delivering really good music, so it was okay. So we did that. That kind of gave us an opportunity to set up a proper music company then. So we rented a studio in Soho. We started doing a lot of TV ads and theme tunes for TV shows, etc. And then around 2009, I think we started to just get the feeling that there was so many people coming into the music space. We were always going to be pitching. We were pretty good at the music, but actually we were probably better at the business side of it. And neither had any formal business training, but we were quite natural in that area, and we were very driven to be successful. So we were looking for different types of businesses to start up, and we realized that actually we were maybe better at the kind of the briefing part of the process, meeting, building clients, etc. And we're like, actually, we could help other composers probably better than we can do the work ourselves. So we started a small music agency of composers, built a roster of people that we were representing. And that came with a small music library. And
Yeah.
that library got bigger and bigger because every year you keep releasing music. And then where every year on the kind of commissioned music side, that just goes back to zero every year. We might do, say, 20 jobs during the year, but back to January, it's another 20 jobs through the year. But in the background, this catalog that we created was growing and growing until
Yeah.
that very much became the company. And that was Altitude Music, which we started in 2010. Built that up to we built that up pretty quickly. By 2016, we sold it to BMG. They were looking for a music company. They wanted a production music operation in the UK. They acquired us, and we went to work with BMG, and that was really exciting. We were really keen to do that. Not interestingly, not really driven so much by the money. That was great to be acquired, but it was the challenge of two people who really just started their own thing. And it was like, how far can we take this? So from
Yes.
the very first license that we did through to this multi-million-pound company was acquired by BMG, how much further could we take it? That was
Yes.
really exciting, and that was what drove things. And of course, for me personally, there was this challenge of I left school with no qualifications. I didn't have much. I did believe in myself, but I don't think I was supposed to be that successful if you look at the road I was on. And so there was a bit of a challenge there as well, like what am I capable of doing? Yeah, where does this go? And we had a 3-year contract, and when that came to an end, like there was a very much a feeling of, will we actually get to the end of that 3 years? That would have been success in itself
Yeah.
because you can't hide for 3 years. It's going to unearth all your kind of strengths and weaknesses through that time. And we were really successful, and we're still there now. And that was 8 years ago when we sold to BMG, and we're still there now, and it's stronger and better than ever. We're doing great stuff. It's very creative. We built these amazing teams all around the world, and yeah, it's one of the strongest. Our department is very successful, and obviously we're part of a very successful company in itself, BMG.
Yeah. And you're providing music now for TV shows,
Yeah,
movies.
we work with all the major broadcasters around the world, every network in the US, every channel in the UK, all the digital SVOD channels, all the biggest advertising agencies and stuff in around the world as well. So from a learning perspective, that's been amazing because this was again one of the things that I was really driven to is the fact that actually as a small company, no matter how successful you are, there's certain doors that actually remain closed because
Yes.
big companies do tend to work with big companies. So that again was one of the things was like, what can we do at a bigger scale and almost have a kind of entrepreneurial startup mindset, but
Yeah.
working with a big company where you've actually got the weight to do interesting things. That's been great.
Mm. Well, I remember, I think it was last summer, I was asking where you were. We were on the phone and you were just going into a meeting at Netflix. Who's listening, want to know his reach. Your reach really is right across the world. We're a small little bedroom, spare bedroom studio to a studio
Yeah.
you hired out to getting acquired to where you are. I'd imagine musicians listening to this says, "How do I get in touch with Scott?" He's obviously the guy, right? But you said something about the entrepreneurial spirit, and I remember listening to Steve Jobs talk about Apple. That's how they continued to perceive themselves like a startup, getting together about the ideas and collaboration within the team, etc. It's your leadership that has brought from where you were to where you are now and inside that huge company, BMG. You didn't say today, but you did tell me like a couple of weeks ago that your department was like rocking it, right? Way above what they were expecting. So that's your leadership. So, how would you define to anybody listening who wants to be like that or wants to know what is that? What is your leadership? What would you say your philosophy was? This is about there's a purpose and there's having passion, right? You've obviously got the passion with the music and the business and wanting to make the business, and then there's a purpose. Those two are always tied together. People don't really understand that normally, right? but there's like a vision or there's somewhere that's lighting you up and it's feeding that passion. So, what would you say your purpose is? What would you say your philosophy is, if you like,
Mm.
your how you are a manager, how you
Um,
lead?
there's so many little answers that make up the big answer,
Yeah,
um,
good.
and I'm likely to miss quite a few of them. But I think the one thing I've always believed in myself is that I'm quite creative, so I can problem solve quite quickly. And I'd happily go and sit in a room with anybody and think about a problem and how would we do something, whether it's creating a product or an organization or a system or anything like that. I've always felt quite natural in that area, but I've always been very weak in the detail part, I'm dyslexic, and how I'd actually put things together, the writing things up, all that sort of stuff I've really struggled with. And so I've had to rely on other people. And actually, I think one of the best strengths of any leader is not being afraid to have very impressive people around you. Try and hire up, don't
Mm,
hire down. I always use the sort of description if you go to and this is nothing against shop owners, but sometimes you go into a shop like a hairdresser's or a record store or something like that, small indie boutique place, and you often find that the owner hires similar people to them, but just not quite as good.
mm,
They're like they're clones, but they're not quite as confident. They're not maybe as cool. Whatever
yeah,
it is, whatever line of work, and it's a kind of vision for me. That's a visual example of slightly hiring down, where it's
yeah,
like you want to surround yourself with people who are going to be challenging, exceptional, and that comes with challenges, yeah, because often those people know that they're better at what they do than you are at what you do. But if you
yes.
want to get stuff done, you've got to be surrounded by those people. So I have to be because of my strengths and weaknesses, but I'm very confident in the fact that I know what my strength is. So I know that I can hold my own and push forward in a certain area. So that's one aspect of how I see things.
That's gold. That's one of the gold nuggets for people listening, right? Rather than feeling threatened by someone who's more educated in a particular area or adapt to a particular skill set, rather than feel threatened by it, that's what you want because it's going to cause you. You're going to have to grow to be able to work with them.
You have to grow. You have to keep upgrading. So there's that. I think there's another thing I hear about where that sort of procrastination where people, once I'm ready, then I can go to the next stage. And everything I've seen is you just get going and you learn on the way. You just have to start by doing
Mm.
and you pick up whatever tools you need for that day. And it could be half an hour before a certain thing, and you go, "What do I need? Who do I need to be to get through this?" And
Yeah.
it's do what you need to do. Obviously, the more preparation, the more expertise, the more training and learning, the better. Obviously, that all helps, but there's never going to be enough if you're waiting for it. So
Yeah.
get going, and with that, abandoning bad ideas quickly. So,
Right.
you know, if you're very creative and you're having lots of ideas, and we did this a lot with Altitude, the company that me and Casper owned, we would go, got an amazing idea, we're going to do this. And then we'd get so far along, we go, this isn't working. And we would drop it like a stone. We wouldn't sit and wait on it, but it would be calculated, but it would be like, stop, change direction, and go again. And it's almost like the more you can adapt and change with flexibility and speed and not taking ego into it, I'm wrong a lot. It shouldn't matter whether it's me that's wrong or somebody else that's wrong. You've got to be able to one, have the conversation and be like, okay, look, that's a bad idea. Don't worry, I have bad ideas as well. We got to
Yeah.
stop this now. But the most successful companies to me seem like the ones that are able to make lots of mistakes but make them quickly and move through that. And I would imagine that we probably don't see that what comes to the market from say an Apple, but I can imagine to get to an iPhone, there's 1,000 bad ideas that everyone thought was going to be super successful, and maybe with other companies they would just keep pushing on with that longer than they
Yeah.
should.
Yeah. Very good. I mean, just speaking to you because you're in music and I've done some songwriting myself, you can start with an idea and you can go so far with it. And then it might be Yeah, let's do and let's come up with something else. At some point, you get it's actually not working.
But it's difficult with songwriting, I think, because actually at the beginning of any inspiration, it feels incredible, yeah.
Mm.
And then, but with a song, as you're producing a song, actually towards the end, and you've been living with it for days or weeks, it does start to sound a bit boring. But sometimes it still might be amazing. Sometimes it's better to just, I'll come back to that in a couple of months and see how I feel.
Yes, yeah. Not all analogies apparently break down at some point.
Yeah.
All right, good. That's great. So if you look at back at all of that, what would you say was your biggest challenge or
My
one of your
biggest
biggest challenges over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I know my biggest challenge because I mean, I've spoken to you about it. My biggest challenge is I am still triggered by certain scenarios where I want to say public speaking situations, but to be honest, it's not even that. I still haven't really got to the bottom of what makes it happen. It's getting easier.
Yes.
Again, it's one of those things that if I was waiting for it to be solved, I wouldn't be getting out of bed in the morning. But
Right.
yeah, I think there's still, whether it's a bit of imposter syndrome or whether it's just a bit of, animal mind that's just there forever and I've got to deal with it. But it's certain situations where the confidence will just disappear and I'll really struggle. And I have to do work on that. I do meditation now.
Well, what's that look like? Like you're in a meeting and suddenly you freeze,
Yeah,
or it look like
yeah, because usually at the start of a meeting, there's just that sort of unknown part where I go into a certain social situation and it's almost like I create high stakes in my head when I shouldn't have any high stakes now in mind. So I can
yeah,
my rational mind says there are no high stakes that you can't deal with. High
yeah,
stakes is for a hospital or boardroom. Rationally, I know it. I know I'm very experienced. I know I've got good answers and can work things through, but every now and again, I'm still triggered by things that just make me go, "Oh my God, get out of here, fight or
yeah,
flight."
yeah, 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 and you just go silent, right?
But
Oh, well,
to be honest, I'm happy talking about it because I think it's one of those things that I think everybody has their things,
mm,
and I hate the idea that that they would ever hold people back
yeah,
because you
well,
have to live with stuff.
yeah. I appreciate you saying that for everybody listening. People thinking, I've got this, or might have a stutter, or I might have, I'm not good at maths, or I'm weak at that. And where I get from if it was you, it was just, well, just go anyway and just jump in. So appreciate you saying that as like another nugget for people. When you're hesitating on the edge, just jump. I coach people all the time in that. And if I look back, one of the best pieces of coaching I got, which I didn't like at the time, I asked Werner Erhard, who started out this whole training, this massive thing. I said, how did you come up with all this? How did you? He said, I've no idea. I just started. You just start. I mean, no, there's got to be more to it than that. Come on, tell me more. I mean, did you plan it? Did you this? He goes, no, you just start.
Yeah,
And ever since he told me that, which was years ago, that's was what you do. And I quite often have to give that advice to people. You just start and we'll work it out as we go. And I can hear that from what you're saying. So very, very pleased you brought it up that way in context, inside of what you've been doing and still are at work on and growing that business. Wonderful. What would you say to anybody out there struggling? Maybe they start their own thing. If you think back to where you started, right, with your bedroom thing, and then you're blagging your way into getting business from TV companies, etc. Somebody out there struggling right now, we can always talk about the economy. We can always talk about things that are going on and situations and circumstances and reasons. They're always there. What would you say to someone right now who's up against it, struggling?
yeah. Again, there's probably a few answers, but one that jumps to mind is you have to keep your head in the right space. And for me, for example, I listen to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks. I find that whatever I'm listening to, I'm really inspired in that direction. So if it's a health podcast, I'm like, I'm getting, if there's one thing that's going to get me out going for a run is I've just listened to 30 minutes of some Huberman podcast or something like that. And he's talking
Right.
about get outside and there's a lot of amazing business podcasts and inspirational leaders. And there's a lot of like this one. There's a lot of great things that basically will get you in the mental zone. And I think you've got to be in the zone for anything, like any walk of life, any expert. It's like when they're in their space, nothing else matters. And I think, if you're surrounding yourself with that kind of thinking, listening to the likes of Tim Ferriss or those kind of motivational and people that just know about success, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world, doesn't matter what's going on outside of your sort of business thinking. But if it's almost, I remember hearing that listening to a podcast is like having a relationship with a one-way relationship with somebody. So like
Mm.
you can now have a relationship with the most impressive people on the planet. They don't know, they're not talking, there's no two-way dialogue, but there's definitely
Right.
one-way dialogue, which
Yeah.
means you can be inspired and live as if you're surrounding yourself by these incredible characters, and that will lift your perspective of what you think you can do. Even just that, I'd say, has a massive effect on your self-belief and capabilities. The amount of tools that are available now as well, it's never been so easy. The thing that helped me actually, just thinking about it, when I started composing for sort of film and TV, was the fact that through the 90s, I always had to rely on producers and studios. Like you always had to hire. It was always really expensive, which meant it was always people had to pay for it and I didn't have any money. As soon as you could record music on your own computer at home, I was away. There was nothing holding me back. Now, not only can you record, produce, you got YouTube telling you how to get all the tricks to make things sound absolutely amazing. You can self-publish, you can get stuff on Spotify, you can make your own videos, you got social, you can be an entire record company. Now, I know we're talking about other businesses as well, but that's just the music piece. I would say it's probably the same with most businesses now. Like there's nothing that stops you. The tools are there. And I
Mm.
think with the likes of Chat GPT, for example, as soon as you have a question, you just ask that and it gives you the answers.
Yeah. Great. Good. All right. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
I would be really happy doing something, either continuing what I'm doing, and
Mm.
there's a lot to do. I've got other ideas, business ideas. I think there's certain things in the music industry that could be done differently, better,
Yeah.
technology, etc. But I also enjoy other things that aren't music related. I live now with a little bit of I find it healthy to be very driven by what I'm doing day to day, but almost be prepared for change at any time because
Mm.
that is the way the world is. I'd be happy to, yeah, go in several directions. I don't have a clear answer, but I
Uh,
do love what I do. I do love what I do, and there's plenty still to be done.
yeah. There's a purpose to it, right? So, what would you say the purpose to it is for you? There for you. There's.
Yeah, creating.
Mm.
What we're just embarking on a slightly new thing at work at the moment, and it's going to require massive amounts of creative branding, marketing, sales teams, all the stuff. There's lots of opportunities in the media world. The whole media landscape's changing. I find that really exciting. I'm definitely in my flow when I'm in the thick of what are we doing? How are we doing this? Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Great. Scott, thank you so much for being on the show. How do people get in touch with you? They want to reach out to you. They want to, I don't know, do business with you, or they want to just maybe ask you to mentor them. I don't know. How would they?
LinkedIn, probably. Yeah.
Right. Scott Doran.
LinkedIn, work for BMG. You'll find me there.
Wonderful. Scott, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Great.
Cheers.